Hey, welcome to the CORY Morgan Show. As you can see by my background, no more cactus, no more mountains. I'm not sitting in the comfortable sun. I'm back, and I see the weather of Alberta just made a point of reminding me of what I was hiding from all winter. I guess it was quite nice most of the time I was gone, but my Lord, it's terrible out there right now. Well, I'll get over it. It's just a couple of days, a taste for it. And of course, nothing ever stopped while I was gone. I was doing my shows while I was gone, as you saw, and now I'll be back to do them. It's going to be a busy 8 months. Boy, this is the year of independence and a lot going on. So I'm going to talk actually in a little while with Franco Terrazzano, on some federal issues. He's talking about the bailouts to Canada Post. And we got a floor crosser, Matt Generou. One of the things the Taxpayers Federation has been talking about is the raises given to our members of parliament. They're very well compensated, those guys, and they're getting another raise right away. Matt sure earned it, hasn't he? I can't wait to find out exactly what positions he gets and what raises he gets. So, yeah, the people up in Edmonton, I'm sure a number of them aren't terribly thrilled with him. All right, well, let me get going on what I want to rant about today, and it's mass immigration. It's a big subject. David Coletto actually put out some interesting numbers. I mean, Canada is just beyond the pale with the numbers that have been coming in thanks to Trudeau's lunacy, and is threatening the social and economic well-being of the entire Western world. One needs to only look at the catastrophes in Europe, as decades of unchecked immigration has led to entire sections of cities becoming uninhabitable to locally born citizens, while race riots and demonstrations choke cities on a regular basis. Integration has become nearly impossible as migrants cluster into introverted communities of their own and refuse to adapt to the cultural norms of democracies that they entered. What we're observing in Europe is a precursor of what Canada can look forward to if there isn't a radical shift in immigration policies. Trudeau's decade of mass immigration led to overwhelmed healthcare and education services while a housing crisis emerged. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney, he's taken some tepid steps in fixing the problem, but it's only so far amounted to shuffling it around. I mean, for example, the $1.2 billion program that was giving refugees hotel rooms in Canada has been ended. That just means the refugees are packing into Canadian shelters. Nothing's going to improve until the actual flow of incoming refugees and many others is cut, and those who don't belong in Canada are deported. While cowardly politicians deserve much of the blame for this growing crisis, the massive, bloated bureaucracies that have mushroomed in Western democracies have made immigration reform close to impossible. Canada's system of immigration processing and control is so hopelessly inefficient and rife with ineptitude that the backlogs just continue to grow no matter how much more money is tossed at the issue. It's unfair to both Canadian citizens and to those well-meaning immigrants who are trying to legally enter the country. Last October, the total number of applications in immigration, refugees, and citizenship in Canada inventories was 2,182,000. They got an accurate count of it. The backlog is only continuing to grow, and it's little wonder when one looks at the speed which they process applications at. Privately sponsored refugees often wait nearly 3 years for their application to be processed. Government-assisted refugees wait over 2 years. In the meantime, they sit in limbo within Canada and collect either some form of social assistance or often disappear as they head across the border to seek greener pastures in the United States, which doesn't exactly help Canada endear itself more with the United States with our currently prickly relationship. The current cost for healthcare alone, just for refugee claimants, is over $1 billion a year. Regular immigration processing isn't much better. Family sponsorships take 1 or 2 years to process, and you can get what's called an express entry that takes 7 to 8 months. And the problem begins at the border with over 100,000 illegal immigrants and refugee applicants currently awaiting background checks. 100,000 waiting for that. They have 13,000 employees in Immigration Department of Canada and 17,000 more in Canada Border Services. With 30,000 well-compensated civil servants tasked to the issue, why can't they get a grasp on this? The answer is simple. Government bureaucracies are bloated, inefficient, and controlled by unions, making reform too difficult for politicians to find the courage to take it on. I mean, come on, we're living in the digital age. It's hard for somebody to be truly undocumented, even if they're coming from the most underdeveloped of nations. It beggars belief they can be so difficult to perform simple background checks in less than a few weeks. In fact, when it comes to developed nations, those can be done in minutes. Bureaucrats drag their heels and shuffle outdated forms from one desk to another while these backlogs keep growing. And when it's finally determined that an applicant will be denied, they're often misplaced. At last count, Canada lost track of 34,000 foreign nationals who've been ordered to leave the country. One way to reduce that backlog immediately is to turn undocumented people away when they arrive at the border. Nobody has the guts to implement such a common sense and simple policy, though. And for those being processed in the system, it's time to light a fire under the butts of these bureaucrats. Before it came down to 20% of them are going to be laid off within a few months. Rest assured, they're suddenly going to find their way back to work because they're all working from home and fighting that currently right now. And if they want to avoid the axe, they'll find some efficiencies. The ones with ambition and brains will cover their own butts, and we'll see some improvement. The federal government's been in a pitched battle with them trying to get them back to work since COVID. It's time to lay down the bloody law, return to work or be fired. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. It's ridiculous and unacceptable in a country the size of Canada, with rather easy borders to control, and a staff of 30,000 dedicated to immigration can't figure out how to process applications in less than a couple years. Politicians can rail and claim they want to address the issue all they like. Unless they want to take on the incompetence of the bureaucracy, though, things won't change. And Canadian cities can look forward to the no-go zones that Paris is currently enjoying. Immigration can be a good thing. In fact, it is, and we need it, but only if it's controlled and planned. And that's not going to happen until we take Canada's civil service and bring it in line. All right, well, let's check in and see what else has been happening in the news while I've been hiding out south of the border. If they let me across the border.
They did. You must be miserable.
I'm always miserable.
Minus 37 with the wind chill this morning.
Oh, I know.
And you're used to plus 37. I mean, it must have
it's been a
shriveled yourself.
Well, some things were terribly shriveled when I came in. And there wasn't much to begin with.
No, it's not fun. But at least the snow has stopped. So
yeah, it's just one blast, I guess. We'll always get one every February. I just wish it could have gotten in a week earlier, maybe.
Exactly. So speaking of your rant, Premier Smith has an address to the province tomorrow night. And her chief of staff tweeted those immigration statistics. I think you said Canada's grown by 24%.
34. Some immigration numbers, yes.
And, by far, double, triple the rest of the world. And our chief of staff, Rob Anderson, tweeted, make sure you tune in tomorrow night. So it sounds like she's going to be addressing it. Probably looking for more control, same as Quebec has.
Yeah, well, we know, though. I mean, this is the way it works. We can ask for what Quebec has, but when we do, we're jerks. Yeah. When Quebec does it, it's their right. So carry on, I guess. We'll see what happens.
The news didn't stop while you were gone. Tumbler Ridge and all sorts of horrible, horrible stories. In fact, that's our lead story at the moment. You remember there were some news reports of a young girl, I think 12 or 14, called Maddie, who spent 45 minutes doing CPR on one of her classmates who was shot, and she's written a Facebook post today or late last night, and gut-wrenching thoughts on what happened to her friends. I think "Fly Angels Fly" is the headline on it. And you'll remember Adam Skelly, Toronto barbecue place. Yeah. I think it was actually a Etobicoke. He was the guy that kept opening up his restaurants during COVID, and they finally sent in dozens of police and the mounted patrol unit to shut him down. He was so thrilled. He moved to Alberta. He lost everything, moved to Alberta. But his case is finally going to be heard by the court system next week.
Oh, just 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years. You touched on it, Matt Jeannot, Edmonton MP, crossing the floor. This is the guy who said he was close to crossing the floor last year. Yeah. And then he basically got caught out, so he just said he was going to resign from politics. Now he's claiming today that Prime Minister Carney's speech in Davos really touched him, and that's the reason he's crossing the floor. So
sure, something touched him, all right. Right in the wallet with a cabinet minister's post in a few months.
Exactly. His former colleague, Edmonton Conservative MP Kerry Diot, this morning tweeted, "What a jerk." Then he quickly deleted it, but I think a lot of his constituents will share the same thing. Interesting story. 84-year-old Alberta guy has won the right to go to the Alberta Human Rights Commission and asking whether or not mandatory driving tests for elderly people is constitutional. He's had to pay a couple $100 each time. I think it's 80 or 75 and 80, and he has to go for driver's tests. And he says that's not fair. I've got nothing wrong with me. Why should I have to go for a driver's test?
I've got to go for those actually every 3 years for my class 2 or class. No, what the hell have I got? I got a class 4. But yeah, I got to get tested every 3 years. It costs $140 actually.
Outrageous.
Yeah, it's a hard hit.
That's outrageous. Speaking of 84, my dad turned 84 today. So I just like to wish him a happy birthday. Love you, Dad. Bad story out of Lake Tahoe. Big avalanche yesterday. 9 people currently buried under the snow and missing and unlikely to be still alive. And we got another entry into the BC Conservative leadership race. Somebody by the name of Harman Bangau. I must admit, I've never heard of the gentleman.
Well, I'm sure Jared's tracking it closely, though, for the BC viewers.
Yeah,
we've got name to folks out.
We've got a story on, and it's getting quite crowded. I think that's at least half a dozen of them in there. With still time to go.
They need a competitive race. I think that party, well, conservatives being conservatives, they're busy ripping themselves apart. So hopefully some sort of leadership emerges.
And the fun and games will really begin when John Rustad enters the race.
Oh, well, he's been back and forth on it. Yeah. I think he confirmed that he's not going to. This is the last race.
Is he?
I think so.
I don't know. I'll bet you 50 cents that he enters.
Oh, okay, I'll take you on that one.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the updates. And we'll see you on the pipeline.
See you on the pipeline.
Right on. Right, that is our news editor, Dave Naylor. And yes, lots going on. Lots to cover, lots happening. The reason we can do it, just I got to remind you folks and nag you, is because you guys have subscribed. So if you've subscribed already, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. It's $10 a month, $100 for a year. Well worth it. Keeps us accountable to you. If you have subscribed, thank you. If you haven't, come on, get on there, guys. Help us pay those bills. We've got so much to report on. And, you can see the new reporter's always still over my shoulder there, populating that back room. Yeah, Matt Generou, it's just what I don't like out of the whole thing, and I'm a crab, I'm a cynical sort of guy, and those sorts of self-serving moves just deepen that. I'm also a political wonk. I want to see people engaged. I want to see people participating in politics. I want to see people thinking they can make a difference through their elected officials. And when you look at the saga of Generou, you can see that he was planning on crossing for his own bloody sake. Let's not beat around the bush. He just doesn't want to be in opposition. It's as simple as that. And he got caught with it last fall. So he basically shut up, went to ground, lied, said he was going to leave this spring. Said he wanted to spend more time with his family. Can't they find a new trope? Come on. We've seen that with enough liberals. Most of them don't like their own families. They did that in the last election. There were a couple. They said they were going to spend more time with their family, and then the polls changed. They said, I don't like my family, and they ran for office again. Generou's doing the same thing. And that'll lead to people not voting, because they're going to say, what's the difference? What's the point? Why do we bother? And that doesn't serve us well. It really doesn't. So, just the partisan self-serving crap out of him. I mean, that's annoying enough on its own, but the damage it does to our system, to the faith of people in the hoping that anything can possibly change within this is immeasurable. And, I'm going to have my guest on soon. I'd like to hear some of those numbers because I suspect that the spectrum that our former opposition member of parliament of income he could get if he manages to climb the cabinet scrotum pole to a higher position up there will be pretty generous. And of course, they'll say that wasn't the reason he crossed, and the same old song and dance from people. Now, I know some people have been talking about, and that's where I get some blowback, saying we should make it, so that they absolutely must go into a by-election or resign if they want to cross the floor and all that. And I still disagree with that. I don't think they should be forced to do that. I hate seeing these crossings, and I think it's unprincipled, and I think it was self-serving. But if you think leaders are powerful now, take away the ability to floor cross. It will become even worse. I hate to say it, but it will actually get worse. Actual functional recall legislation, though, if the local constituents really thought the crossing was that bad, if they had a mechanism federally, maybe that's where they'd be thrown out. Rather than Alberta, where we just had a bunch of provincial ones with which failed because it was just actually a union publicity tantrum rather than an actual citizens initiative thing on the ground. Either way, I'm sure we'll be talking about Mr. Generou a lot more in the future. We can't hear from him because he put his X account on lockdown because he doesn't want to actually hear from his constituents, because I suspect they're going to give him a bit of an earful if they get the chance. All right, let's bring in Franco Terrazzano from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation to add some more good news to seeing where our dollars is spent. How's it going, Franco?
Hey, Corey, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show. Hey, can I just weigh in? Because I heard you talking about the floor crossing. And, I think I don't know if it's a solution, but what I think needs to happen is we definitely need federal recall legislation, right? And I'm in Ottawa. I'm in this political bubble where you hear all these talking heads go on all the time. And, the one thing that they're forgetting about is that this shouldn't be about what the political strategists want. It shouldn't be about what the party whips want. The people whose voice really matters is the voters in that riding, right? And that's why we need this tool, this accountability measure like recall legislation, to give voters in that riding an ability to either hold their MP accountable, right? If they're oppose what General is doing, hold them accountable, or if they support it, then no need to go forward with the recall. But I agree with you, Corey, that it's recall legislation is what Canadians desperately need.
Yeah, well, I would get a feeling, like I said, General locked down his X account because he doesn't want to hear from people. I'd suspect if he was facing a risk of the constituents actually organizing and firing him, maybe he'd at least have the courage to face them and talk to them about why he crossed and so on. But he's just kind of hiding and hoping that the furor way, dies down, and then he can take on. I guess I'll go right into that. One of the generous raises going to our members of parliament. I saw that from you guys at the press release just recently. It's pretty healthy level of income there.
Yeah, so I mean, a backbench member of parliament, along with collecting dust in the House of Commons, they're getting about a $210,000 annual paycheck already. So look, you asked what's the difference between an MP pay and a minister's pay? Well, an MP you're getting about $210,000. A minister's salary is about $310,000, right? And hey, don't forget, every year, and this year looks no different. On April 1, MPs pad their pockets with higher pay. This year, the pay raise will be around $8,800, all the way up to an extra $17,600. Now, Corey, a little bit of good news is you actually have one MP, one courageous MP from New Brunswick. He's a conservative, Mike Dawson, who has publicly rejected the pay raise. Just talking about how the struggles facing his constituents in good conscience, he can't accept a raise. But, you mentioned about MPs sticking their head in the sand or whatever. The reason that these members of parliament get away with these pay raises every single year is because they know if they all stay silent, they'll weather the public storm and they'll be able to take more money. But, thankfully, that has all changed because of this courageous MP who's finally publicly opposing the politician pay raise.
Yeah, no, and it's good to give a thumbs up now and then. I mean, we should, I'm always there ready to pounce on them when they do something wrong, and they give me plenty of opportunity to do it. But we can't forget to thank them and give a thumbs up. Some of them do have some principles, and they put our money where his mouth was. So that's appreciated. It'd be nice if that started a trend.
Yeah, why is it only Mike Dawson, right? Why is it only one MP who's publicly opposing this pay raise, right? Why? Where is the rest of the 300 of them? Corey, we always hear these politicians say we're all in this together. I'm starting to think they're talking about the gang of 300 of them up here in Ottawa when they say they're all in this together, right? Like, where is the rest of the MPs here, right? Prime Minister Mark Carney, he told Canadians a couple months ago to brace for sacrifices. What, sacrifices for me, you, and your audience, Corey? What about the sacrifices for Carney as MPs? Or what about the Conservatives, right? The Conservatives always talk about, cutting taxes, reducing spending, finding savings, and they're right to talk about that. But where's the official opposition forcefully and publicly opposing the MP pay raise? Why aren't they standing with their own Mike Dawson? Or how about the NDP, right? The NDP always talk about sticking up for the little guy. Well, why isn't the NDP publicly opposing this massive pay raise for members of parliament who all make over $200,000 a year?
Yeah, the silence is rather deafening. I mean, just to put things in perspective, Alberta's premier makes about $190,000 a year, which is sick. That's some pretty healthy compensation. But you can actually be the premier of a province of 5 million people and still make less than a backbench member of parliament who never actually does anything for 4 years in their elected position. That says a lot.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And look, I hear some MPs saying, we'll give it to charity. Here's what I say. That's not good enough anymore, right? You all make more than $200,000 a year. You can give to charity without billing taxpayers for your pay raise. Also, you've had years to fix this, right? We've been talking about this since the beginning of the pandemic, years ago, right? They've had years to fix this. There's no getting by this issue anymore. They have to do the right thing. They have to fix this. Also, I hear some people chiming in on social media, right? Saying, well, it's hard to stop a pay raise. And I'm over here like, what do you mean? Okay, this isn't rocket science we're talking about. We're talking about politicians not taking more money from Canadians who are struggling. Like, come on. Like, if we can get somebody on the moon, pretty sure we can figure out a way to stop giving politicians a pay raise every single year.
Absolutely. Well, we'll just have to keep pressuring, I guess, keep firing them when we can when we get those elections. So what I first contacted you about, though, was something that a lot of people are perhaps already forgetting about, but just that ongoing Canada Post saga, striking not striking, settling. And of course, the bailouts. I mean, the bailouts are coming. There doesn't seem to be cutting the size of that corporation. What are we going to do with this, Franco?
Well, we should be selling the Canada Post, right? But I mean, look, why do we need, it's 2026. Why do we need a state-owned postal service? Come on, right? A bunch of our peer countries have privatized their government state, their version of Canada Post. There's no reason Canada can't do it either. But look, at the very least, if Canada Post is going to be a crown corporation, then it needs to figure out a way to operate without, taking $1 billion bailout from taxpayers every single year. Because remember, folks, in 2025, the government announced $1 billion bailout, right? It was supposed to be repayable. And then a year later, the government announces another $1 billion bailout for Canada Post. So a couple things come to mind, Corey. Number one, MPs should be demanding in the House of Commons when that money is going to get paid back to taxpayers, right? Because the government told Canadians it's supposed to be repayable funding. Okay, so when are we going to get our money back? And number two, if Canada Post doesn't pay back that money, then MPs should be asking this simple question: who's getting fired? That's the question that we're demanding, right? But Corey, I think this goes even deeper than just Canada Post, right? Like, look, the government is completely broke, more than $1 trillion in debt, and taxpayers can't afford, and we shouldn't expect to have to bail out every crown corporation that goes to Ottawa cap in hand, begging for more cash.
Well, yeah, and that's one of them. And the numbers, I want to get further into that massive deficit that was given to us last fall continues to grow. I saw an updated number just recently. Carney is still just pulling out that checkbook. He's making Trudeau look like a spendthrift almost with the speed that he's increasing spending. When's the next budget update going to come to tell us just how much more they're borrowing on our grandchildren?
I mean, look, now that the budgets are in the fall, I'm hoping we get some type of budget update in the spring, right? Like, I hope we get some basic transparency from the federal government. But you'll remember right after the last election, you even had Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne. Remember, he was musing about perhaps no budget in 2025? And it wasn't until like massive pressure, massive backlash from the Canadian public, including the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, that the government backtracked and even provided us with a budget for 2025. But look, I mean, it's bad news here in Ottawa. I mean, think about it this way, right? Because I love Alberta, no provincial sales tax, but you still pay federal sales tax, right? And every single dollar you pay in federal sales tax is going to pay interest on the debt, right? This is bad. This is not good, right? They're wasting your money on debt interest. They're wasting your money left, right, and center. And look, they're sticking your kids, your grandkids with a mighty debt bill that they're going to be paying back for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, well, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember what that was. You put a sign out in front of Parliament to help remind them a little bit of what's going on with their dollars, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have a sign up right now, actually, too. I mean, so we put up billboards, quite frequently. One of them, we talked about how the biggest waste of money is the interest charges on the debt. More than $1 billion every week, poof, gone, right? Because that money's going to the bond fund managers on Bay Street. Corey, you'll like the billboard we just put up, okay? It shows that the cost of the federal bureaucracy has gone up 80% in 10 years, yet most Canadians say services have gotten worse. Shrink the federal bureaucracy. Right in downtown Ottawa, right in front of Parliament Hill, right in front of the Prime Minister's office, where bureaucrats have to walk by that sign every single day. And they'll know that Canadians are sick and tired of paying higher taxes to fund a bloated and underperforming federal bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, and reminding people of, because most people, I despise interest payments. I hate it on my own credit cards if I've, put off paying too long. It's just money burned. I mean, you really are getting nothing of value out of that aside from somebody who extended and lent you some money to begin with. I mean, just some of those analogies to make Canadians realize you could build a hospital a week in this country for what we're just throwing away on interest. I mean, if healthcare is your number one concern, they should get on the members, in Parliament's case and say, well, let's get that down so we can start building hospitals instead of talking about it.
Yeah, and look, you know what I always say too, Corey, is the biggest threat to a government bureaucrat's paycheck, it's not political ideology. It's not even the Canadian Taxpayers Federation right there, right? The number one threat to a government bureaucrat's paycheck is the interest charges on the debt. You don't believe me? Ask the Saskatchewan NDP of the 1990s what happens when you keep kicking the deficit can down the road forever, right? Things got so bad in Saskatchewan that the NDP government in Saskatchewan was forced to close down dozens of hospitals across the Prairie Province, right? So look, times are bad. The unfortunate part is that it doesn't seem like really any political leader in Ottawa, or I should say within the Liberal government, is taking it serious, right? You asked me about Carney versus Trudeau comparisons. I mean, over the next handful of years, Carney's planning to add twice as much to the debt as what even Trudeau was planning, right? The banker was supposed to be better with the numbers than the drama teacher, but the banker is planning on adding up even more debt over the next handful of years.
Well, then getting down, I mean, there's only one taxpayer, but we get hit with all those levels. I see your provincial directors are busy enough. Alberta's got a budget coming out next week that sounds like it's going to be pretty ugly. We like to get on our high horse, but we're not balancing budgets here either. And in BC, I just saw that release come out from your British Columbia director. They got a crazy deficit coming ahead of them. I mean, this debt is just swamping us on every level.
Well, let me just talk about the BC budget for a second. We can get into Alberta, but look, the BC budget is almost impressive in how bad it is. Okay. Like the government is increasing the debt out there in BC by like $30 billion this year. That's how much the debt is going up according to the BC budget. And like the government is massively increasing debt while it hikes income taxes, while it puts through that sneaky backdoor income tax hike known as bracket creep. Corey, you remember the bracket creep fight in Alberta not too long ago, right? Also, the BC government's essentially hiking PST on some types of services. So it's absolutely startling that the debt is going up so fast in British Columbia, all while the government under EB is hiking taxes. Like, what's going on here?
Well, not to mention, EB hasn't shown himself to be terribly friendly to resource development or some of the things that would generate the economic activity to pay for some of this spending. They burn us on both fronts.
Oh, that's right. And look, like, it was years ago when I was the Alberta director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. But, one of the big reports, I think it came out in 2019, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that blue ribbon panel, right, on spending. And it showed that, like, the Alberta government back then was spending per person, like, what, $10 billion overcharging taxpayers compared to similar provinces. So, I mean, Alberta does have a long history of spending way too much money. I'd have to go through the books and see what Premier Smith is doing. But for years, we were pushing the Alberta government to drastically cut spending because it was just spending too much, right? After the PCs, after Klein held up that paid in full sign, then the NDP, and then even the UCP under Kenny, right? Spending way too much.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, Klein, as much as he is a saint essentially in Alberta in history, but he loved that bracket creep you were talking about. That was the nice sneaky tax tool to keep raising taxes without appearing to be raising taxes on folks. And I mean, I for the most part, like a lot of what Premier Smith's doing, but boy, I'm not seeing the fiscal conservatism out of this government that you would expect out of the UCP. I'm kind of worried about this upcoming budget.
Yeah, I'm worried too. And like, I know Chris Sims, our mutual friend, Corey, will be covering the Alberta budget for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So, I'm not really looking forward to seeing what's in that budget. Maybe we'll be surprised. But I know Chris is gonna really make a stink if there's anything bad in there.
Oh, I know she won't hold back. Well, I'm looking forward to that budget. Hopefully there's some nice surprises somewhere hiding in there. Or, I mean, Premier Smith's warning that the signaling that it might be a little rough. Maybe there's actually going to be some spending cuts coming. Not that people necessarily enjoy them, but we need them. Before I let you go, then, where can folks find the work you're doing, the work Chris is doing, the stuff in BC and all that good stuff?
Well, the best place to find all our stuff is on taxpayer.com. That's our website, taxpayer.com. You can also follow us all over social media. Best way to do that is just type in Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
Right on. Well, thanks for joining us again, Franco, and giving us an update on the fiscal scene. It seems to be kind of the same story over and over again, but we can't give up. We got to keep letting people know what the hell's going on over there, and hopefully just make the victories where we can, and the opportunity to give a thumbs up to one good member of Parliament. So thank you very much to him out in New Brunswick.
Hey, Corey, it's always a pleasure to come on your show, man. Can't wait to see you next time I'm in Calgary.
Yeah, keep missing you when you come in. I'll get you on the next one. Right on. Thanks, Franco. I'll talk to you again soon.
See ya.
So yes, guys, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano, and check them out. They do have somebody in every province covering these things, and we need to look at it. As well, look at the municipal level. We didn't even have time to go into that, but citizens forget. I think we're just so exhausted, but we're just getting hit on level after level after level with taxes and bad spending. Our own Derek Fildebrand was with the Taxpayers Federation before, and the battles he used to have with Nenshi when Nenshi was mayor were legendary. So, check out the Taxpayers Federation. They put it into good lay terms, not necessarily all that dull economist sort of thing, and just really expose what's happening to the money you work so hard to earn that gets taken away by the government. Okay, we're going to try something different. We're going to bring in callers, okay? This is new to us, new to me, and we'll put the number up there on the screen. Now, we don't have a system where we can keep a bunch of people in a queue on hold, so it's kind of the first one gets through, and then it goes into a voicemail, but I'd really like some interaction with folks on there. We'll just see what that phone number is in a moment there. There we go. So it's 866-479 West. I don't know what West translates into numbers. And then it's extension 711. You can see that in the bottom of the screen there, though. And call in, talk to me about anything, aside from anything that would get us in trouble with the CRTC or something for discussing on here. Check out that number below there. Give me a shout. Let's have a chat. Let's see what's going on. So it's not just me rambling all the time into the wind. I can hear from some of you guys. So while hopefully somebody comes in to give us a shout and chat with things, let's see what else is going on out there. Let's talk legacy media, some of the beauty stuff. City news, this was something else. So Dimitrios Nicolaides is the education minister in Alberta. He was actually a target of a recall. The teachers union hates him passionately. And they tried to do a recall that failed to take him out of power. And then he went on a fundraising and awareness thing for about domestic violence. He climbed with a group of people to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, and it raised money for domestic violence because his sister had been killed. So at the top, they did photo opportunities at the top of the mountain. They had an Alberta flag, and they held it up there, a flag of Alberta. Of course, you're an Alberta politician, cabinet minister, Albertan, you do that. Well, City News puts the picture up and implies that it questions his loyalty to Alberta as he's waving essentially this separatist flag, wondering if he's a separatist or not because he held an Alberta flag while at this hike, this event, this thing for, trying to battle against domestic violence. This is how ridiculous and absurd legacy media is getting. That was true journalistic incompetence. And what were they thinking? But the slant that the media has in Alberta, the loathing they have of Premier Smith is really something to behold. And it really exposed itself on there. And these guys are going broke. People are tired of it. That's why I like to remind you, get on, subscribe to the Western Standard. We have particularly on my show, our reporters report the news. Myself, I give opinions. But we're honest about what we're doing. We're not hiding it. And legacy media is going down. They're beholden fully to the government. Chorus Entertainment, I think their stock is down to like 3 cents a share now or something like that. We'll see what happens to that. The old heyday of talk radio has really disappeared. The last good one kind of was Daniel Smith. They're almost unlistenable in Alberta in particular because, again, there's just this anti-provincial government mindset among them that they just can't seem to get over and can't let go. So that's all you do is listen to the show. When you hear a news report with some certain talk show hosts in Alberta, first thing they'll list the report and then explain why Danielle Smith's an idiot. That's the formula for all of their shows as you listen. For those who remember the old days of talk radio, and that's what we're trying to replicate a little bit by getting some live interaction with some calls if somebody wants to give it a shout there on that number below. I don't know if you remember the 90s, but that's some of where I grew up with the politics. You had Dave Rutherford. They had a number of Daves, these different hosts. And Dave was quite conservative and unapologetically shown. He kind of had the unapologetically so on the show, and he held the anchor spot kind of. And you had Dave Taylor in the afternoon. And Taylor was a liberal. A reasonable liberal, kind of the older liberals, more of the Chrétien style liberals, not the Trudeau liberals. But you got a bit of balance. And they wore their bias on their sleeve because they were opinion hosts. But the show would actually, you'd have multiple shows from people coming from different perspectives on it. And it was good. And you could actually form some things. So you'd listen to different folks. Now, it's all left all the time. One exception I'll give is Ben Mulrooney, who's been syndicated across the country. I think it might be a little too late. But when you listen to the Alberta hosts, man, you'd think Alberta was an NDP province. I mean, you can tell that they want us to be again. So let's talk about demographics in Alberta. Here's an interesting thing that popped up. I'm going to write about this for next week's column, I think. So the top name for Albertans, and this is happening all around the world, Mohammed. And actually, at first we reported it that Mohammed was only 8th in Alberta. Meanwhile, it was number 1 in Toronto, and it's been number 1 in a lot of European cities for a long, long time. But it turns out it's number 1 in Alberta, too. It's just that there's a lot of different spellings for Mohammed. So and we gotta walk carefully with this. Look, it represents a religion. It represents a culture. And religions and cultures and the practices are choices, okay? You can choose on how much you want to act upon religious dictates, on how orthodox you want to be, on how, true to the old ways. I mean, if you look at any religious texts that are thousands of years old, they're probably talking about some things we just don't do anymore. No more slavery, no more polygamy, and that's in the Christian Old Testaments, things like that. You're not going to sacrifice your kids on rocks and things like that. Just doesn't happen anymore, at least for most. But there is a problem with Islam, and we got to get frank about it, guys. That particular religion is hanging on to the old Stone Age tenets through Sharia law, and they really have a thing with trying to convert the world. Not every one of them, and that's where it gets dicey. I mean, there's loads of fantastic Muslim people. There are. But there is a disproportionately high number of them that are difficult to deal with, and they're a problem in every country in the world. Every one of them. Name a single Islamic country that isn't a dictatorship. Name one that isn't. Name one that follows what we accept as common human rights now. Name one that gives rights to gay people. They don't exist. Yet we embrace this. Name one large population of Islamic people into a new nation where they're getting along with their new neighbors. It's not happening. We're seeing that throughout Europe. We're seeing the riots. We're seeing the abuse of citizens in the streets. We're seeing some of the rape gangs because, again, and not all of them, I always got to cover with that, but it's true. I don't want to accuse everybody of such because most of them certainly don't want to go out and molest people in general. But there's a larger number within that cultural choice than we're seeing within others. So when we see Muhammad topping the names of new kids, we should just think a little bit, okay? Is that where we want to go? We want to bring in immigrants. That's some of the discussions I have with people. Say, we got to shut down immigration altogether. No, we don't, and we can't. It's good for us to bring in new Canadians, new Albertans. We just have to be bloody selective about it. That's the thing. We want to make sure that they will economically contribute, that they'll settle in, that they will be a benefit to us over here. But the other part that they're afraid to talk about, people in the political levels, is cultural immigration. Are they a good cultural match for who we are here? Are the people we're bringing in people who will value human rights, that will value the rights of women, that will value the rights of other religions? Not necessarily, particularly when most of them are coming from, unfortunately, Islam. So guys, watch those trends as they keep going, because it should be a warning and a precursor to us right now. Jordan's pointing something out, saying we need more born and raised Albertans having kids, but we can't afford kids while wages remain repressed for private sector workers. Okay, that's an interesting, larger discussion on things all around. Yes, settled North Americans tend not to have large families anymore. Doesn't really happen unless you're, again, very religious, Mormons, things like that. Well, not necessarily. I mean, there's some large families of people of all sorts of faiths, Catholics, Christians, you name it. But for the most part, small families are sort of what's in right now. They're having, 1 to 2 kids if people are having kids. A lot are not having kids at all. Some of that has to do with prosperity and changes in culture with us over here now, too. You got to remember, a few generations ago, child mortality was quite high. You had to have a few kids, actually, because you wanted to make sure you had a few make it to adulthood. There was no such thing as pension plans, retirement plans, things like that. So you had to make sure you had a large family so your kids could take care of you in your old age later. It was an economic choice to have a lot of kids. The irony of it was the more poor a person is, the more children they need for economic security, even though children are something of an expense in some ways. It's an investment in their future. When you're in a country, which still for the time being, and Western countries where we're wealthy, because, I mean, let's face it, raising 10 kids, say, that's a lot of work. That's a difficult household. That's a heck of a commitment and a task. You can afford to just have one or two. And that's what people are choosing to do. And I don't know how that's going to change necessarily. Like, I don't think we could tell people, well, just breed more. I don't think people want to have more than a couple of kids for the most part. And I understand that varies person by person, couple by couple. So we're not going to change the birthing trends over here. That's part of why we need immigration. It's because having a declining population is not going to be good for us in our economy either. But we have to be selective about who we're bringing in. And that's why, yes, in developing countries, you still get the larger families. And a lot of the people coming from the Islamic nations here are carrying that trend over from the less developed countries, and they're having large families. We're just going to calculate those things in. And to be honest, the onus of integration is got to be on the immigrant now. We got to stop with us having to accommodate. If you're not willing to come here and integrate and accept the values of the nation you're moving to, then don't come. Stay where you are. You want to chase Jews around, you want to beat women, kill dogs, and do all those beautiful things that the hardcore Islamists do, then stay in one of the many, many, many Islamist countries out there. Don't bring that crap here. Don't sit there, and we see that stuff where they're doing protests in the middle of streets, and all slamming face down in the middle of an intersection and a prayer. That, you know what that is? That's a dog peeing on your leg marking its turf. No, I'm not calling all Islamic people dogs, by the way. But when they're doing that on our streets, that is what they're doing. And that's a power play. That's a dominance play. That's a culture war. And we shouldn't be taking it lightly or accepting what's happening there. Everybody has the right to pray. Do it in your place of worship. Do it in your household. Do it in a public park. But when you purposely block streets as a demonstration, that's their way of giving you a collective middle finger and dominating you. That's what that is. And no, we don't have to put up with it. Like I said, religion and its practices are a choice. Race isn't. That's why racism is unacceptable. A person is born to whatever race they are. That doesn't change. And it's wrong to hold any of that against a person. Ever. But cultural and religious practices are a choice. And we can criticize those. In fact, we must criticize those. And we want to make sure that we're developing a modern, civilized world as well as we possibly can. One more note, Frances Widdowson, she's been outspoken. The Kamloops band, where the hoax with the buried children thing is still ongoing. Put out a big weird press release documenting a bunch of stuff, basically just telling us what we all already knew. They haven't found any bodies. Of course, the bottom line is they never looked. They got $12 million to look, but they never actually looked. And then the government went and slammed shut the books, so we can't find out exactly what they did with all that money. But it also talks about all the complexity of being able to look for these children. It must be complicated when they don't exist. And hinting almost as if that maybe if you just gave us a little more money, we'd start looking harder and we'd find them. Look, that issue can be resolved quickly, one way or the other. Dig a bloody hole. Get a shovel. Go to Home Depot. I'll buy it. I'll send it out by UPS. I'll buy you a shovel. You've got all of those marked spots, all those little flags in the ground where these alleged burials were. Dig a hole or shut up. And they should be refunding that $12 million they got to look, because obviously that was just fraud. If you're not even actually going to look. But no, the government, instead of pursuing the money they threw at these fraudsters, closed the books so we can't find it. We can't find out what they did with it. That's a real problem. But their press release, look it up online. It's a sad joke. One joke, I guess, out of 8-6 saying, talk about shovel-ready projects. Something of a light joke on a dark issue, but I like that one. Thank you very much for that. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for tuning in today. Maybe write down that phone number, though, and keep it in mind for next week. We'll open it up again in that last 15 minutes and see if folks want to chat one-on-one on some things. Tune into the Pipeline. Marty up north has a show up here going on the Standard as well now. Check that out. Just check out the YouTube channel and all the rest of those channels to see the productions. John's been working his butt off as we keep expanding our video content on here. Thank you all for tuning in today, and we will see you on the next one.